So this is our new coop, and luckily one of our neighbors, when we moved in, knew a guy, Southern Missouri, not a huge surprise, so we went and picked it up. And this coop is overall pretty nice. It's got some big tires on the bottom that made it pretty easy to move around. And if you can see our yard right now, where we keep the chickens cooped, the ground is kind of trashed, so it'll actually be a really nice feature when spring comes back that we can move the coop to different places and kind of not tear up the yard too badly. And that also makes it pretty lightweight. And so another nice thing about the coop is all of this hardware cloth on the side. And that helps us keep the predators out. So we've had some issues with hawks and raccoons and weasels and God knows what else. So this is really comforting when you're putting your coop up for the night to know that nothing's going to be able to get through this once you lock them down. The inside of the coop is pretty spacious. It's got a nice run area. As you can see, we let our chickens free range, so they have access to the whole yard during the day. But like I said, when we've had predator problems, it was still nice to know that we could lock them up until we had some predator proofing in place and they could still kind of move around and not be on top of each other. And he built it like a triangle with some siding, so that keeps the inside nice and dry. All of the snow and rain just kind of falls off of it, and it's easy to clean, and we just took the power washer to it, which is also nice to be able to do. And on the inside, we've got a heated waterer set up with the nipples, and that kind of keeps things from just settling into their water. It's got a closed top system, so that keeps it a little more sanitary. And we've also got some feeders, and those are hanging from the ceiling because if they're sitting on the ground, then you can get squirrels and mice in there, and that's not what you want. So pretty spacious run. And then inside the coop, we've got these kind of nest boxes blocked off. And so we just put hay inside of ours because it's cheap, it's easy to get in and out, and I think it insulates pretty nicely. And so this is where most of our flock will coop up for the night. Each side has this kind of panel that lifts up, so it's easy to get inside of there. The guy that built it had set it up with some of these nest boxes, which are all over the ground now. We haven't gotten a ton of good use out of them, but the idea was that you could put them right into the coop, and then when you wanted to clean it, each quadrant would kind of pop out, so you could throw out the old stuff and put in new stuff. We just haven't gotten a ton of use out of it because it's a little awkward to get in and out of the coop without having some kind of like propped up system. So that's something in the spring that we'll probably think about fixing up a little better.
And the mice.
Yes, and we've had some mice kind of tunnel through the bottom. Inside, all of this is constructed out of wood, and so we found some mice droppings and an actual mouse in there, and they've kind of chewed through it. So that's something else that we'll want to fix up. And the nest boxes are kind of obscuring that, so I think it's better now that we can just see to the bottom of the coop and make sure there's nothing weird in there. So another important part of any coop is that it has ventilation, which is kind of unintuitive. You'd think you'd want it to be sealed up pretty well to keep all of the heat inside, but if you don't have any kind of ventilation system, the chickens respire, and that can cause a lot of problems with condensation. And then their coop becomes kind of a damp place, which is really bad for their respiratory tract. And so both of our coops have just kind of a hole near the top that lets kind of the old air get out and the clean air get in. And again, it's covered with the hardware cloth because creatures will find a way in if you give them any amount of space. Another thing we had to do was just put some kind of garage sealer into the creases where our doors lift up, because we found that water and snow was dripping through. So that was kind of a cheap, quick fix, but you really want to make sure that your coops are staying dry. So that's our new coop, and Now I'll show you our green coop, which is our older one. Hey, Shan. So this is a prefab coop. I think we picked it up at like a Tractor Supply or some kind of store like that. It came with a bunch of kind of panels of wood with the hardware cloth and everything in it, and just like an IKEA project, we pieced it together. I think it was like $150 around there, and it took us maybe an hour to get it all put together, so that was pretty nice. People in the reviews online either love them or hate them. We've had this one for about 3 years, and it's been through a move across the country, and I think it's still working pretty well, so I can't complain. It was a really good starter coop. The reason that we got a second coop is that we expanded our flock. So when we started with 4, this was a pretty good size for us, but we're up to 12 birds now, and we just needed a little more room. So this one of the obvious perks is it's super cute. It looks like a little country cute coop. It's got a couple of different access points. So this panel lifts up and kind of gets you into our nest box area, which is very dirty. And so there's 3 different nest boxes. It came with these kind of posts that just sit right inside of the coop there. Those are just bars for roosting. Our chickens didn't use them a ton, which is why they're not in there anymore. And we went in and added a natural branch kind of roosting bar, and sometimes the birds use it, sometimes they don't. This one's got a nice little post that comes up so you can prop it open to get in there and clean it. Also, it's got a kind of lock feature built in, which will keep your birds nice and safe. Another access point is this hinged door on the side. And so everything locks, which is really important. And this just gives you more access into kind of the main space of the coop. Also, there's this wood tray on the bottom that's kind of frozen in place, but anyway, you can see where it fits right in between these 2 pieces, and this whole thing would slide out. So you could pull it out, dump it, slide it back in clean. The problem with that is if your hay or your shavings or whatever it is that you're using as bedding is stacked up higher than this, when you pull the tray through, it kind of all just gets blocked up behind that. So it's one of those things that's better in theory than in practice. And we can lock that up. 2 more access points here. These are kind of important if you ever need to get into the coop. So you can open up both of these, top and bottom, and that's becomes like a person-sized door. It's tight, it's kind of cramped, but it's a nice option to be able to get in there. And again, we've got the food and water hanging from the ceiling to keep any kind of pests out. Both coops have a little wooden ladder that lets the chickens get into the coop without having to fly or work too hard to get up there. And we try to keep as many points locked during the day as we can. And then this is kind of our main access point for the chickens to get in and out. And so this hinge just pops up. It's got a nice little arm to keep it in place. And then at night, you can put it down and lock it. And just like the other coop, it's covered pretty well in this hardware cloth. Some people use like a chicken wire, and it's kind of malleable. It's not as sturdy as the hardware cloth is. So while the hardware cloth is a little more awkward to work with when you're actually building the coop, I think it's a lot safer in the long run. You're going to be less prone to having tears in it. So that's our second coop. Again, it's got the kind of triangle top so the rain and snow just falls off of it. And 3 years, and it's in pretty good shape. Hi, Cheyenne. Hi. Come here, you. Hi, pretty girl. Just grab some worms. You want some worms, Denali? Got her. So now I've got my chicken friend Denali with me. She was one of our first 4. She's a red star, so she's very sweet. They're meant to be a really good kind of dual breed. So they're meant to lay a lot of eggs and also be a decent meat bird. but we love her. So another thing that we had to put up recently is just kind of this pallet on some cinder blocks. So we had a bantam, a little modern game bantam that got picked up by a hawk earlier this week. And that was really disappointing, and we weren't really sure how we could keep the flock safe. Putting up fences works really well for terrestrial kind of ground dwelling predators, but not for birds. So we put this up, and the idea being that it's just another shelter for them to get under. We thought maybe since the other coop, they have to kind of hop to get into it, that maybe they were scared to do that and that would make them like target. So this is just a little place for them to kind of hang out under whenever there's a bird in the area. And so far it seems to be working all right. They're kind of using it right now. And another thing we just put in are these two kind of Tupperware boxes. We just picked them up for about $5 a piece and cut a hole in them. And so we're hoping these will be our new nest boxes. The chickens right now are kind of laying in the same place where they sleep. And since it's winter, you know, it's just kind of mucky and gross in there. So we wanted to give them a cleaner option where they could just lay their eggs and then not be sleeping for the night, kind of getting them all yucky. And so with those, we just put a couple of eggs that had already been laid in there to encourage the chickens to start using it. Usually whenever you introduce something new to the yard, they're a little apprehensive about it. So anything you can do to encourage them to kind of investigate new things will help them be more comfortable with it. Right, Cheyenne? Yes. Another thing with the predators, we had lost our first small bantam, our modern game bantam, to what was probably a raccoon or a weasel. If you kind of Google the things that predators leave behind, you can usually get a good idea of what animal is attacking our flock. And so with that, we decided to put up this electric fence. And this was something that we picked up online. I think we might have gotten it on Amazon or some. Premier One. Oh yeah. So it's a Premier One electric fence. It was about 400 or 500 bucks to get the fence and then the fence post and gate along with it. Yeah. And basically it was really easy to install, and it's really simple to use. And that was one of my kind of big apprehensions about using an electric fence, is that I would end up shocking myself more than anything else. And so far that hasn't happened. So really, it's just kind of these panels of netting, just like your Christmas lights might come in for your bushes. And then each post is kind of built into the netting already, so you don't have to put any of this together. And at the bottom of each post is a metal kind of foot that you just shove into the ground. You can just shove it right down with your boot heel and put it in place. And then there are 4 kind of corner posts, which are here in black, and those just give you the option to kind of pull your corners taut, that it stays in shape and the fence kind of stays upright and gives a little more structure. We've had some really big rainfall, some big storms come through, a lot of snow, and they haven't moved at all. So far I'm pretty happy with them. There's also a little kind of charger device that lets you check and see if you've got a current running through your fence and make sure that it's still functional. And so this is kind of the footage that we've got closed off for now. Again, the nice thing about this and both of our coops is that it's completely movable. So if we want to move it 20 feet that way or towards the back of the yard, or even move it to the front yard, those are all super easy options. It would just take an afternoon to sit down and do it. And of course you can put the fence into kind of any shape you want. We went with a square just because it fit the yard. Another option that we chose to kind of purchase for a little more money was this electric gate. And so again, it's from the same company. This is just part of Premier One, and it's just this easier way to get in and out of the fenced in part of the yard. So it's just these 2 kind of black poles, so right here to here, And there's a little kind of cavity in the bottom where this gate kind of comes in and out. And so you can just move it out of the way if you want to move anything in and out of the space. And then when you're done with it, you can just grab it. Ooh, uh-oh. Well, that didn't work very well. Right, Denali? Grab it by the handle, and you just put the post right back into the foot. And this part that sits up and down, you can just get it over your kind of end cap to the gate, and then it's tight again. And so the only thing you need to be careful with the gate is that you've got these two orange prongs with metal teeth in them, and that's what keeps your current going from the rest of the fence to your gate. So if you move this prong over to the wires on your gate, now your gate is electrified. So I would not want to touch this right now or I'd get a nasty shock. But if you want to make sure there's no weak spots in your fence, but you can still get in and out, then a gate is a good option. And so I just move this part over to the white part of the fence, and now the gate is safe to touch. So again, it's a little more money, but definitely worth it for the convenience. All right, so that was our first video. I hope you thought it was useful and interesting, and if you like, you can subscribe to our channel, and we are Kyle and Millie at the Whippoorwill Farmstead. Thanks.
Beautiful.